We're looking forward to this. Jeffrey Lenkov joining us right now, great lawyer representing Pete Rose as his attorney, and has been very, very involved in this entire process with the news that we find out Pete has been reinstated and is now eligible to be a Hall of Famer as well. Jeffrey, thank you so much for the time. I know it's been a huge week. I'm going to open up the floor here to start and just tell me how the last 48 hours have been for you. And did that include some important phone calls?
I mean, the getting the decision and the aftermath has been tumultuous, great, but hectic, all of that. And then giving the news to the family, and then, flying last night, attending the event last night in Cincinnati and flying back this morning. It's been a pretty crazy 48 hours.
All right, I want to start at the beginning. How did this all start? How did you get involved with the Pete Rose case, and how did this all start to where now he's reinstated with a chance to go into the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I grew up in Montreal. I was a big Pete Rose fan, but I had no intention of ever sort of positioning him for reinstatement. But I got to know him, and I produced a show on Fox called Whip Around, where Pete was the central figure. It ended up winning the Emmy. I got to know Pete. I got to know him behind his gruff exterior and started to really get to know him as a person. I did a book deal with him, and then really in 2015, he wanted me to join a legal team that he had, some other lawyers he knew, and I didn't like their approach to MLB, so I didn't participate in that petition for reinstatement. And then because that went awry, I sort of took it amongst myself and said, someone's going to have to do it right. And it took me 9-10 years to do it right.
How would you have done it differently to start, to hopefully have gotten this happen before Pete passed away?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've thought about that. I wasn't in the room when Pete in 2015 met with Manfred and his crew. Commissioner Manfred is very sophisticated, a lawyer. You have to come into those meetings completely candid, understanding, and be sort of remorseful of what you've done in the past. I don't know if Pete did that effectively or if that was done, but he had an opportunity there. And because he lost that opportunity, those opportunities don't come easily. With the missteps that Pete did along the way post 2015, there was a lot of cleaning up that I had to do, a lot of shaping the narrative, a lot of understanding what Giamatti intended, and then having productive, credible, honest conversations with MLB.
Jeffrey, I was on Whip Around. You never got me a job, so I'm offended.
I would have, but AJ, you didn't need reinstatement.
Not yet. I haven't done anything yet. Yeah. Life is still young. It's still young. But some people would say that I have. So it's fine. But when you met with Manfred this last time, you and Fawn, Pete's daughter, how does that conversation go? Because there's been a lot of pressure politically and from people all over the world saying, like, Pete needs to get back in. How does that conversation go with Manfred? Because you mentioned he's a lawyer, but Pete wasn't there to defend himself anymore. So it's basically you and his daughter in there with Manfred saying, here's our case. I don't even know how to start that.
Right. Well, nor do I, really. So, because it's a unique situation for anyone. But let me back up, because you raise an excellent question, and I'll give you a foundation understanding what happened. So for years before, leading up to the reunion event in Philadelphia in, 2021, I think. No, 2020, 2021. I was positioning Pete for a new narrative that he wants this and he wants to get back into good graces. And there were missteps by Pete public where he makes comments that really don't position him well for reinstatement, because at the end of the day, Manfred has not just Pete to worry about, but has a game to worry about, has precedent, future Hall of Famers, present Hall of Famers, a lot of issues on his table. And I'm not saying that because I'm supporting Manfred. I'm telling you as a fact. So when we finally sort of aligned on, let's get a meeting on this, I was going to go to the meeting alone. And then it occurred to me, to your point, that, what's missing here is maybe a voice, the family voice, Fawn's voice on behalf of the family, on behalf of the kids. And I brought that in, and Fawn wasn't prepared, but she spoke openly and honestly about what this meant to her family and how they've sort of suffered through Pete's transgression or suspension. And I think that resonated. The human element has to resonate with anyone. If you met Fawn, she's an extremely likable, lovable person. And I think that resonated with Manfred, who was really open to hear the story.
Did you talk about this with Pete before he passed away? Like, what would his reaction have been when this news came out, had he been still alive?
People have it wrong. People think that he did publicly bristle at the Hall of Fame and scoffed at it, but that was a defense mechanism because he had been hurt for so long in denial and sort of misapproaches and, the feeling that maybe Major League Baseball wasn't acting quick enough. But all that is said, he would have been overjoyed. He'd be clicking his heels. He would have been slapping people in the back. He'd be telling everybody. If he would have seen the outpouring, I've been to many sporting events. I'll tell you, I've never seen sort of the rock star status last night had in Cincinnati, how they did it well, but more importantly, the emotional feeling of the Cincinnati, Reds nation. So he would be overjoyed.
By the way, the White Sox smacked them last night. Just saying. Sorry, Jeffrey. I'm Pete Rose. They smacked them. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to ruin the night. Yeah. I'm sorry to ruin it. I just couldn't help myself. But rock stars, the White Sox. What do you do as a lawyer, agent, when your client kept shooting himself in the foot with some of the things he was saying and doing? Did you ever just want to grab Pete and say, dude, just stop talking, stop doing things to not help your cause?
AJ, I think you were in many rooms with me. It sounds like you were on a spy. You were on a spy camera or something.
That's right. I'm in one of those balls behind you.
Yeah. I did it physically and in person many times. It's very difficult. What made Pete great was his headstrong, unique, I'm going to put everything on the field. But once you get to know a GOAT like that, you realize that they became who they are, and they are outliers, different than any human beings on earth, because they have a singular, different approach to life. And Pete's approach was, if someone triggered him, he fought back. He grew up on sort of the poorer side of Cincinnati, and he had to struggle a lot. So to him, I don't think he ever escaped him being the blue collar guy that when you're pushed, you fight back. The one thing Pete wasn't really good at, which a lot of folks are, he wasn't good at being political.
Hey, for the card collectors out there, you need to know about Arena Club. You can check out our showrooms. We've all got cards in there. You can buy, you can sell, you can trade, and you can rip packs. They're called slab packs, Kratz. And then what happens if you don't like what you pulled?
You get an instant offer. But before you get that instant offer, you can show your showroom around, kind of like when I used to put the cards in the sleeves and my buddies would come over and show them. Now, bang, show them on the phone. Instant offers right there if I need it.
Yep, that instant offer is for the estimated fair market value. Accept it on the spot. Acquire the best value for your money with Slab Packs, transparent checklists, and Arena Club's Slab Safe program. Whether you're buying, selling, trading, grading, or ripping packs, Arena Club is the safest, most trusted in the game. Right now, you can get 20% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/foul and use code FOUL. That's arenaclub.com/foul, code FOUL. So this part's important for me to understand here, Jeffrey. So in 2022, after receiving a letter from Pete asking for forgiveness, Rob Manfred said, quote, "I believe that when you bet on baseball from MLB's perspective, you belong on the permanently ineligible list." Then obviously fast forward, and he thinks that a determination must be made on what permanently ineligible means. Obviously we're looking at this like, why now? So let's also remember a few weeks ago, Manfred talks to President Trump. Also, MLB being in good graces with the government never hurts. Antitrust exemption, basically a legal monopoly, among other things too, right? You want to be friends with your local officials when you're asking for money for a ballpark, etc. How much do you think that factored into the decision just now?
Let me tell you a couple of things. First, whatever your political affiliation is, it never hurts, whatever your cause in life, to have the president support it. I would be foolish not to invite or accept support from any fan, official, and particularly the president. President Trump was a fan of Rose's. He was a big baseball fan growing up, and he was a fan of Pete's before he became president, both first term and second term. So the public, I definitely think that having the president out there talking about the issue helps accentuate the issue. But let's be clear, the petition preceded anything POTUS did. And Manfred had been open, and we had been discussing this matter for years. Manfred had allowed Pete to come in long before any president, whoever was in office in 2015, to be able to come in and say, look, present your case. So I think Manfred understood at the end of the day that it was never intended that the permanently ineligible list meant until the end of the world, until end of time. It meant for a specific impermanent time, a specific time, and that the bigger issue for Major League Baseball and Manfred, what would be the impact on the game. Certainly as Pete aged, there was no further impact. He wasn't going to be a player. He didn't want to coach. What Pete really wanted to do was be a minor league coach. But he would have no more impact. So there was a clear line of legitimate authority to be able to argue that the ineligibility ends upon your lifetime.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I have two questions for you. First of all, what do you say to people like myself that don't think Pete should ever get into the Hall of Fame? And that's my opinion, I know, and you have a different opinion, and I'm fine. But like for me as a former player, he broke the cardinal rule, and that's it.
Right.
And I don't think, and I know he still has to get in, but what do you say to people like me that think he should never get in?
Well, first of all, I respect your opinion. You're allowed your opinion. Your opinion matters, actually, because you gave it all in the field. You played, and you're from a perspective that's different than I, who played, Little League ball. But let me answer your question directly. While I respect your opinion, I think that the Hall is a hall of really what you brought to the field. It's not ultimately a hall of moral turpitude, ethics, and people can argue that it is. But if you go that route to analyzing the human frailties of each potential admittee, then you got a real problem. Then you may only have 5-6 guys in the hall because everyone made mistakes. Everyone has good and bad that they've done. And if you go through the Hall of Fame's roster, those plaques, and you walk through that really special room, there's a lot of folks that have some baggage. And I think that you should have a hall that represents the game. And when you're talking, AJ, about what someone brought to the game, I think as a player, you would agree, though, certainly, that what Pete brought to the game, what he physically brought to the game, both in his accomplishments, achievements, and the mere passion and will, is completely Hall of Fame worthy. But I respect your argument, and I understand the argument. I just think that it's a hall that if you're going to tell the story of the game, you got to include him. And I think you got to consider what to do with Clemens, Bonds, and the rest of the folks, because the issue's sitting out there. Let's end it one way or the other.
Okay, listen, I agree that nobody's perfect, and trust me, there's a lot of dudes in there that did a lot of things that are not legal and all that. I get it. It's fine. I just wanted your perspective. We don't have to get into a discussion on it. Now, the next thing is 2027 is when Pete's eligible for the Hall of Fame, the next vote. What does the mood change for everybody? Everyone's excited. Oh, Pete. What happens if he doesn't get in 27? Does that change anything in your opinion on his chances or how people feel about this subject?
Yeah, I think the fresher the issue is, the more people are going to pay attention to. I think if he goes first round or whatever ends up being decided, as to the voting, then I think that could hamper his chances. But I'm not really looking that far ahead. I'm really looking at the fact that, how do you make the argument now that he is appropriate and should be in there? That's what I'm focused on.
My last one here for you, Jeffrey, is, any conversations that you've had besides obviously with the commissioner that have stood out throughout this entire journey?
A lot of folks, and I'll sum up rather quickly because we're limited on time, I bet, but I'll tell you that he has always been gracious. There's a guy in that office named Pat Courtney who's been incredible. Dan Halem. I haven't had one moment where they haven't been willing to listen. It's not like, I say that, it's not like they've given me everything I wanted. I've had to go through 9 years of it, but they've been professional and willing to listen to me at all times.
Jeffrey, really appreciate the insight and the time. I know it's a busy time, so this is the baseball show, right? TV, pod, the whole deal that, a lot of people look to for these kind of real conversations. So thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. And at least for now, I'll say, I think it's worthy. Congratulations on the accomplishment here to actually get this across, because I know it was a difficult case.
I appreciate it, guys. You guys have a great show. I'll be getting him in despite AJ, but we'll talk again.
It's okay. Hey, listen, I respect you. I respect the job you did. And listen, I respect Pete as a player. Some of the things he did after that is not my thing. But as a player, Pete was one of the greatest. So, You know what? Good luck to him in the Hall of Fame. But, and I appreciate you coming on and discussing it, because it is a big news story. And you were in the heart of it. And I always like to hear the inside stuff of how things go down, because that's what the intriguing and the important part is how did we get from A to B? Don't tell me A or B. Tell me how we got there. And to hear what you said was awesome.
Thank you, guys. Be good.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.